Podcast about being broken, although you may have been. This is a podcast about strength for women who find themselves in difficult relationships, including that sometimes difficult one with yourself. We'll look at your relationship through a lens of psychology, faith, and a little dash of my own kind of feminism. We're not fixing them, we're fixing you, and that changes everything. Welcome to Stronger in the Difficult Places. Save yourself, heal your relationships. Listen in.
You know it. We all know it. I inherently knew I was in a very unhealthy situation. But I was sure that if I kept fixing me, that would be enough. I will never get that time back. Mm-hmm. I will never get back the years I devoted to unhealthy romantic relationships as well as unhealthy business relationships, because it always
permeates every aspect of your life.
Thank you.
Yes.
That couldn't have been better said. So my hope is that with this book and with others being able to go, okay, here was what I did. Here was my story. Mm-hmm. And then Keith's expertise be able to go, okay, if you're in it, here are some tools. If you are not sure if you're in it, here are some signs. If you're trying to get out of it, here are some things to consider. I was sure I was the problem.
Right.
And I was never the problem. I was enough before I was ever told I wasn't enough.
Whew. That was just a little excerpt of my interview with Stephanie Quayle. She's an American singer, songwriter, and musician. You might have seen her on the Clarkson show or the DeGeneres show. She's a Nashville-based artist with 2 Billboard charted singles. You might have also seen her at the CMA Fest and the Grand Ole Opry. She's a Montana native, and we're going to talk about why women stay. She just released her debut book, Why Do They Stay? And it's a continuation of the story that she shared publicly for the first time on her album, On the Edge. And she also brought in a psychologist to talk about how to spot a toxic relationship, how to get out, and how to heal. You guys are going to love this interview with Stephanie Quayle. She has a story and she has a drive to help other women. But before we get started, my win and my fail, as I do almost weekly. So my win is that I dropped Sully off at boarding school, a school specifically for kids with Prader-Willi syndrome. And it's kind of like she's gone off to college. She's 18 and it was definitely bittersweet, but we're also so happy and excited for her. And I'm grieving, just like I did for my 2 boys that went off to college before she did. But it is a win because that's what our children are supposed to do, right? We're supposed to raise them so they can grow up and get out into the world and start to live their life. And my other win is that I got to visit. So I flew to Texas, picked Sully up. I'm going to tell you about my fail in a minute. Flew to Massachusetts, dropped her off, but we also got to stop in Rhode Island and got to see my son, Sage, which is a wonderful win because he's just doing so great in college. And it's so good to see him thrive and blossom. He's a TA, so he's actually teaching a class, really enjoying it. And so it was a wonderful win. And my kiddos are close to each other because Sage is only an hour from Sully. So that's my win. My fail is that when I went to pick up Sully in Texas, I made a huge mistake and I went to the wrong place. I didn't know that where she was, there's also another one of the same name in the same city, Houston. And so I went to the wrong place. Unfortunately, they are an hour apart. So I drove an hour in the wrong direction to the wrong place. Then I needed to drive another hour to pick her up. Ended up missing my flight, which was so frustrating. It was very ambitious to try to fly into Texas, do all the discharge stuff, pick her up, and get back home the same day. But I did it just a few hours later. And if I hadn't made that little mess up, it would have been seamless. But it wasn't because of me. And so we missed our plane, and it just cost me a couple of hours and many hundreds of dollars in fees. But we got the job done, and I needed to get her home. The reason why I did that so ambitiously is because I needed to get her home to get her hair done. That was the only time I could make an appointment so that she could have her hair done before we left for Massachusetts. So my win and my fails, all about my mommying. And I share those because I want you guys to honor your wins and your fails. We do great things daily And we mess up daily, and it is okay. And I truly believe we need to honor both because we learn from our fails and our wins are worth celebrating. Speaking of, what did I learn from my fail? I learned that I need to give myself way more leeway to accommodate my time management and geographical deficits when I'm scheduling a ticket for an airplane. Otherwise, it's just going to cost me a ton of money. Okay, on to the interview with Stephanie Quayle. Why do we stay? Listen in. Stephanie.
Hi.
Hi. I am so looking forward to this conversation. I'm so thankful that you are willing to come on here and share your story and share what you've learned and your expertise now in this area. So thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so grateful that we have a place to talk about it.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Women haven't always had a place to talk about these things. And
it just wasn't a topic, right?
Right.
I'm trying to remember when even the first time I think the first time actually that I ever heard the word toxic was in the song. It wasn't that a Britney song?
Probably.
Yeah. I think that was the first time I heard the word toxic, and I think it was a positive in the song. So, it's a very different deal.
Yes.
It's cool that we live in a time where we can have hard conversations and talk about all the stuff that just comes with the internal strain. Because I am sure that we're not meant to carry it.
No. And I'm so thankful that we don't have to continue to normalize dysfunction.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about this book. First of all, I love the
talk about your dysfunction.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. I'm ready.
The title of your book is called Why Do We Stay? And obviously, the purpose of my podcast is to help women who struggle in difficult relationships, including that sometimes difficult relationship with themselves. And if you're in a difficult relationship, you're also in a difficult one with yourself. So I love that topic because I've done so many blogs and writing about this concept of, number one, strong women. People assume that strong women won't find themselves in a dysfunctional, toxic relationship, codependent relationship. And what we know is that strong women are actually more predisposed to finding themselves in that because of their strength and resilience, because they convince themselves that they can handle it, that they can fix it, that they can, make this all okay because they do it in the rest of their life. So of course they can fix this thing, right? And
wow, that's so true.
Yeah. And then there's so much shame that they're not able to do it. So let's just start with your story. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to a place of staying?
Absolutely. So I'm going to go back a little bit just so you have some reference. So I'm a singer-songwriter. I have shared every bit of me through my music except this story.
Wow.
And so I released an album called On the Edge, which really went to all my crevices in 3.5-minute song bites. And what that revealed to, the entertainment industry and the one I've been in was, wait, what happened? No, you're Stephanie. You're get it done, find a way, can do. There's no
woman.
There's no way this happened.
Yeah.
And so it really revealed to me, oh wow, I've been fronting great. Like I'm really good at that. That putting on that we will get through it, like you mentioned, with it comes with strong behavior. And so through that, I always thought I would write a book, right? Because the story of which I'll start sharing was so strange, and how to tell this part of me that had been hidden for so long. And then once we kind of put pen to paper, we thought, hey, this could be a tool for others. And that made it like, okay, now I can serve in a way I never really saw coming. So 2009, January 28th, it's a day like any other day. I'm with this guy I've been with for years. I'm raising his daughter with him. We're living together. And I was sure we were building a life together. And I pick his daughter up from school. It's a Wednesday afternoon. We go home. She does her homework. I start cooking dinner, and we get a phone call that there's been an accident.
Oh my goodness.
So backstory on him, he was, he would fly for fun. Mm-hmm. And so when we got the call there had been an accident, we knew it had to do with the airplane. So we bolt to the airport as quickly as we can. And my only thought was, and I'm sure all moms and stepmoms and like moms out there, it's like all I wanted to do was get this little girl to her father.
Of course.
I didn't even, I was somewhere,
mm-hmm.
but my focus
on autopilot. Yeah.
I was, 1,000%. I just wanted to get this little girl to her dad in the event that if there's even a moment that they can have that moment. So by the time we got to the airport, he had already passed. They just didn't want to tell me that over the phone because they wanted me to get there safely. And so we arrive, and this is a Wednesday night. I have to call his mom, break the news to her. I have to call this little girl's mom and say, hey, I need you to come get your daughter, which was so hard for me to say because I couldn't, she was not mine, but she's like mine. Right. And so I left there and was, as you can imagine, in excruciating grief. Like it's just, grief is, that could be a whole day's worth of shows and information. And 5 days later, we had his memorial service at the same airport where the crash had happened. And there was a sea of people I didn't know. Yeah. And predominantly women. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I was asking my friends, they're like, maybe not right now. Like, maybe this isn't the place. And then it was confirmed that night when one of my friends came over and shared that one of his girlfriends had introduced themselves at the memorial. Oh. And so, as you can imagine, it just went from heart-wrenching grief to betrayal, everything's a lie, what was my life? And then you start peeling back everything and start reflecting upon it. Right. And you see how dangerously toxic it was. And I never really addressed it. Honestly, I compartmentalized it. I did my muscle through attitude. I grew up in Montana. You get back on the horse. Like, this is what we do. Going. And I just put it away. Mm-hmm. And as we both know, I think me avoiding it compounded the pain and compounded it all to where I had to address it. Yeah. And so this book addresses all of my ways of addressing it.
Wow, what a story. And so then, though, you had another relationship.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So this is about, and this is like, I mean, it's so obvious to me now. Like, for everyone listening or watching, like, I get it. But when you're in it, man, it's so interesting how you just have these blinders on. Mm-hmm. So it was about 9 months after, and I met a guy. He knew the whole backstory. I mean, in our friend group, a lot of people kind of knew. And my friends were urging me, you have to get back out and live. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't done the work, though. I just want to repeat that. It would have been one thing had I gone to grief counseling and gone to, really sit down and understand the dynamics of how toxic and narcissistic and many other words that we can use to describe that time. I hadn't. And so when this guy came into my life, he said the phrase, and I was hook, line, and sinker. He said, I'm going to show you that you can trust men again. And it took a long time, for me to kind of break my boundaries down. But that was the beginning. That was the beginning. And then that led to infidelities on his part and me having to go to extreme measures to believe, even as far as confronting one of the women. I don't know how many there might have been, but in this case, one. And I found a way to her and just said, hey, no, this is not your fault. You had no idea, but I need to look you in the eye. Yeah. I need to hear you say the words because I'll know if they were his or not. I don't know if that's a smart thing to do, but it's what I did. And it gave me another layer to getting to closure with him. So again, stayed too long, but eventually did leave.
Mm-hmm. How long did you stay?
Ooh, God, it hurts to say that out loud. 4 years?
Okay.
I think. Too long. I have multiple degrees in toxicity now.
I like that. Multiple degrees in toxicity. Yes. And,
I'll probably put it in a song.
I love that. And as we were talking earlier, women stay for various reasons. And so let's talk about what you've discovered and the help that you have to offer to women who may be starting to recognize, I'm in a toxic relationship.
Yeah. We are given such a gift of intuition and gut and that sensibility that I think we can grow and trust, right? Within ourselves. We are a great compass.
Yes.
And in the first relationship, I would find myself going like this, like, huh?
Yes.
Body would react.
Right.
And either I would override that sense or it would be met with, you're crazy, you're insecure.
Gaslighting.
What do you know? Exactly. And in the second relationship, I would question it and it was met with such heat and authority of like, I now again, of course, I see it all, but so dramatically sure that no, you don't understand. I would never do that. And the love bombing that was just kind of overwhelming. Those similar and different ways of communicating, but every time my body would react. I'd cock my head or my gut would go, that doesn't sit right. And I would predominantly override it because again, I must be broken. This must be my pattern that I'm just, transferring onto this new relationship. So it must be me. Right? Must be me. Gosh, how many times? And then also excusing bad behavior. Right? And that happened in both, where I would, if my parents sense things and there was a lot of isolation in that first relationship from my parents, which is a surefire sign. Is that our word? Sure. Yeah.
So isolation from your parents. So that's the classic narcissistic tool is to isolate you.
Exactly. And so they would, anytime they would sense something, there would be this isolation. And it's just really interesting now to see it that way.
Yeah.
And, potentializing, which I don't know that that's an actual word, but I would potentialize the relationship to be
that word.
Would be and never what was right in front of me. Right. So I really live by every day in any sense of the word. When someone shows me who they are, I believe them. I don't go based on what they say. Now. Yeah. That would have saved me a lot of time, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of hurt. Yeah. And, I just don't think we're meant to make excuses for others, And now looking at it too, my light was never lifted. It was always manipulated and dimmed for sure. And I remember one of my friends saying, it's like you're a Stepford wife. I just was fine.
You had the facade that everything's okay. I'm taking care of it all. It's going to be.
Yeah. And it's just not aligned, like when our insides don't match our outsides, it's exhausting. Yeah.
What do you think was the biggest lie that you told yourself that kept you in the relationship?
Well, I think for the first one, especially that I was the problem, that I was insecure, that maybe I was crazy. I think that is the most dangerous word. I actually said I am in a beautiful, loving, healthy marriage. Very early on in my dating of my husband, I said, let me just tell you something. You can call me anything. You can call me the nastiest of the nasty words. If you call me crazy, I'm gone. Because it's too much of it's like a trigger on steroids. Now I can kind of play with the word, and play with it like it's played with in some ways, but man, when I hear people refer to other people as crazy, I immediately go into defending strangers, and I'm like, all right, wait, let's discuss. Are we talking about like, is this like a mental disorder, or are we just like not happy with someone said to you? That is that identifier.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because crazy is such a negating word. You can call anything crazy and this just negates everything about what they've said or who they are, right?
So potent. How is it that one word got that much power?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is used often as a tool to just completely obliterate anything that you said. It's just crazy.
Completely. And I even have to catch myself, right? With when someone is like, I'm like, nope, we don't use that word. So let's find a different way of describing someone's behavior. It's very different than, and it's very dismissive.
Right.
I don't think we realize the potency and power of our words until they're coming at us, that it's just not the case. Like a broken bone heals.
Right.
But words, I'm sorry. I can remember things said to me as a child. It's wild.
Well, I would almost say, I know that abusers and narcissists do understand the potency of that word, which is exactly why they use it.
Part of their toolkit.
Exactly. Yes.
Like, where did they go to narcissism school? Like, is there a school for that? Is there like, they get a little toxic handbook that they're finding somewhere? They're like, it's because it's by the book.
It is by the book. It's completely.
Yet charismatic and know all the ways to, get to the place of where, in my case, I had those vulnerabilities. It was shocking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a learned skill, and there's so many reasons why. And I always like to avoid that conversation. And the reason why is because so many people who are stuck in difficult, toxic relationships, especially with narcissists, they feel like they need to understand it. If I can understand it, then I can fix it. Why does he do that? And my answer is, it doesn't matter.
I love what you just said, because after Paula was his name, after he died, and I learned of all the betrayals, I became an investigator.
Right.
I had to know every why, this, that, and the other to try to put it together. Right.
Right.
And that didn't go as far in the second one. And now I'm to a place where I was like, man, if it doesn't sit right, I walk. I don't spend that time trying to understand. And I understand why you try to understand, because it's just so hard to imagine people are bad. And they're just some bad people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they came from something that got them there.
Yes, there are bad people and they are broken people. And the mistake that a lot of women make is thinking that if they can figure it out, they can fix it. And so you waste time, you rationalizing, trying to fix something that's not fixable. And then you still end up in the same place. And so, yes, there is a reason. You will never fully understand what that reason is. Yes, they are broken. You cannot fix them. The only person that you can work on is yourself.
Yeah, so true. And it is so exciting to get to know me now. I writing a book.
Mm-hmm.
You can't avoid yourself unless you're maybe writing fiction, right?
Right.
I had so many aha moments with myself where I couldn't avoid it. And I had to just look through it, get through it, understand it, walk away, process all these things during that, because I do think the mind and the body does such a good job of trying to protect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I look at it now, it's just like the greatest gift to self, to see those crooks and crannies and really say, no, pick up the rug. Open the closets. Let the skeletons dance. Who cares? Mm-hmm. It's not worth losing time and feeling the weight of the shame that comes with that. Once you kind of let the air out of the tire, right, and talk about it, you find out very quickly there are so many of us that are going through some level of something on that spectrum. And I don't know, I heard someone say something great was when you talk about the pain, it divides it in half. And then it keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it makes it a healing conversation. And that's my biggest hope for this book, is that my wild story that's not that unique, which is also kind of strange. Right. When you're dealing with like women that are finding out things after losing someone, it's like a twisted deal for the brain to go through. But yeah, the hope of, okay, we lost time. We don't have to lose more time.
Ooh, I love that. We lost time, but we don't have to lose more. So let's talk to that woman. How can she start to work on herself when she's in the midst of a relationship that she can see clearly is dysfunctional, not healthy? And maybe she recognizes, okay, those are all the reasons that I'm staying. I'm staying because I feel like I can fix this. I'm staying because I believe it's wrong to leave, or I'm staying because I feel like it's my fault, or I'm the one that has to fix myself. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Well, let's talk to her.
I think the first thing I would say is, what are you saying to yourself when no one else is in the room out loud? I was really hard on myself.
Mm-hmm. Or what are you saying, even in a quiet way?
Too.
Yeah.
I have like when the words leave our mouths and they go into our frontal cortex, it's a like permanent little recorder. Thank you, therapy, for teaching me about my frontal cortex. Thank you very much. And so how we can replace some of that language, right, with ourselves. And that's a daily mission. And also, I would say, okay, how do you feel when you're by yourself? Because I felt pretty okay. I thought I was like, all right, you're not too bad. I'll hang out with you, and when I would get around these relationships, I'd shrink.
Mm-hmm.
I would get quiet. I would be more self-conscious. I would be more like this, where I'm going, this doesn't sit right. And I would be in that state of uneasiness. So I guess my first question would be like, how do you feel by yourself? Right? How do you feel in your own skin? When you look yourself in the mirror, are you good with you? Flaws and all, not seeking perfection, because that's exhausting.
Yes.
That's just unfindable, if you ask me. But who are the people you're around? Because a lot of times that can happen even in your own family.
Mm-hmm.
I think about that a lot. Like, are you being lifted up? Like, I hope when we get off this call, you're like, you know what? I want to hang out with her again. It's like it feels good. And I definitely hope you'll want to hang out with me, because I want to hang out with you. But just thinking about like who we surround ourselves with. Are they stretching you to be great? Are you excited to see them? Or are you having to dim yourself, right, to fit into their world? And usually with narcissistic types, it's very much about them, how they want it, and anything that's disruptive to that is disruptive. And I would start there, from those like immediates, right? My friends knew, maybe they didn't know exactly, right? Like the details, because they would have told me, because my friends are not the jerks. His friends knew. They did not tell me, but they were his friends.
Yeah.
They're not mine now. So in that immediate, like, okay, that check-in, but what are your friends and family saying? Like, they know you to your core.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My friends were like, hello. Yeah. My parents, my dad, he's like, ah. And that was such a obvious.
Did you listen though?
I listened with a but you don't know. Like, it's when it's so good, it's good. Like, he loves, he's gonna marry me. He told me so. Mm-hmm. Right? He told me so. And I think when I think back to that initial relationship, it was based on so much, I was gonna say propaganda, less showing action, more words. And usually those words were used when I was like, something doesn't sniff out right. If you don't want me, I'll leave. And then, it was like, oh no, I have to keep her. I have to conquer. Yeah. Yeah. So, we have great resources and sources all around us. It's, do we want to see that? Right.
Right.
And I didn't want to. I didn't want to believe that the things that my parents were saying, that would mean it wasn't going to work.
Yeah. I love that you pointed that out, because I know that is a huge step, because when we're in a relationship that we know isn't good for us, admitting it becomes so scary, because when you admit it, then you kind of feel like, well, now I have to do something.
Responsible. Yeah.
Yes. And I would like to encourage a woman to go ahead and admit it to herself and know that she doesn't have to do anything. Not yet, not now. The first step is just admitting it, is getting honest with yourself. You can worry about what to do later.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard. And I think what we were talking about earlier is that we put so much weight in our decisions.
Yes. Yeah.
We put so much weight in, no, this has to work.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to work. And I think that doesn't make us a failure, right? And I think that for those that are driven and like achievers and gonna fix it and make it work, and I'm gonna fit this very awkward square into a circle, that it feels like a failure, failed again. And I think one of the big just kind of aha moments I had during the course of a lot of years, and just for reference, that was 15 years ago. I didn't seek out grief counseling for almost 2+ years. I call it emotional rehab, where I went and did a deep dive with psychologists to fix me, to understand, why do I keep making the wrong decision? It is me. I am the consistent, right?
You are the common denominator. Yes.
I am the common denominator. I've got to acknowledge that. And that was one of the things that was so important with writing this book too, is that I understand my complicitness because I stayed. I'm not a victim. I definitely was targeted, for sure, because I had those vulnerabilities, because I didn't have the tools to get strong. And that's the whole point of these conversations, is to give the listeners the tools to understand, man, it feels terrifying. And it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to your point, man, just acknowledging that, hey, this is not good. And now we'll get to the next, right? I had one of my music listeners that, after the album came out, and she reached out, and she was sharing she was in an abusive relationship and she didn't know what to do. And I said, well, I'm no expert. Leave. If he is physically putting a hand on you, just get in your car and drive.
Yeah.
Just drive anywhere, just go. And here are 5 resources that are within 30 miles of you that will be there when you get to the door. And that is a beautiful thing, that there are so many more resources, I think, than ever before. If someone is in a dangerous situation, I think there's a lot of financial burdens a lot of times too, why people stay. And kids, that's a whole other, level of stuff. And in my case, it wasn't my child. So it was different. But I will say, the idea of leaving her made it very hard. When going through my feelings of man, why is he treating me like this? I can't leave. I love him. I love this little girl like my own, and it gets very complicated.
It does. It gets so complicated. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And can you share about the book? So you wrote the book, but you wrote it with
Keith Campbell. So Keith Campbell, he is an expert in narcissism. So he's a professor, and he really goes into all the different parts of my story and exposes what those were, from grooming to gaslighting to what it means to be what is a narcissist, all the different terminology, and kind of puts it in a sense of if this is the situation, this is what you can do. If you're here, if you're there, And, it's interesting as we're talking, it's like, it just makes me want to go reread the book because there's so many new takeaways that I'm having these little micro revelations, even on the flight yesterday, I found myself in a moment. I'm like, oh, I feel something. I need to I gotta figure this out because it's new territory. And I think as you uncover, right, and as you learn and you start, wrapping your arms around it from the standpoint of understanding, it's like, just when you get started and you think, oh, I'm good. There's always
another
more.
layer. Yes, there's always layers.
Shine light on. Yeah. And I think when you're getting it from an expert, it's one thing when your dad says someone is one way. Yeah. It's very different when an expert says, hey, this is not healthy. And to your point, we don't change people. We only change ourselves. And usually as we get stronger, those that prey on people don't waste their time on the strong because it gets to be too much work.
Amen. I love that.
You just get stronger and they'll just get tired.
Yes. And then unfortunately, they will go find another victim. Yes.
And we just got to keep getting all those that are susceptible.
Yeah.
Just, all right, let's just get stronger together. Because eventually they'll just, I can't wait. But will there be a day where this will be a topic of the past, right? It'll be like, this used to be the way. I even think about, especially in the entertainment world, these young women won't experience some of these revolting experiences on the business side because the world is so much more exposed now.
Yeah.
You can't really get around certain things without someone having a camera in your face. I'm sure they can, but for the most part, it's much more exposed. Even, your podcasts and these conversations, there's access to information. Whereas, you're not trying to figure it out by yourself, hopefully.
In a dark closet. Yeah. Yeah. That is one of the beauties of the information age where we do have more information. We can understand things, see them a little faster. Yeah. And hopefully we can get this out there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It just takes the time it takes too. And that's, it took me a long time. 15 years is a long time. And I have a very patient husband who knew the work was yet to be done. And he just is like, but you know what? You cannot force anyone else's
process.
Healing or process. It has to really, and that's like, man, but if we can truncate that for others, if we can shorten that, like, okay, it was this for me, but man, if we can get that down to just, we give people time back. Like, come on.
Goodness. Yeah.
Get better than that.
Yes. Yeah. That's a gift. And that's the gift that you are putting out into the world. And so I want to thank you for being willing to be vulnerable and sharing your story and helping other women in this process who are in a similar situation. So thank you for that. So Stephanie, how can people find your music? How can they find your book?
Yes. So StephanieQuayle.com is for all things like with our tours. So we're doing dates all over the country. And my music is anywhere you listen to music. For anyone who wants to do a deep dive into the story before the story comes out, there's a link to one of my podcasts that goes with the album On the Edge, which kind of like breaks it all down. And then the book is everywhere you want to get a book. So you can pre-order it now. It comes out April 30th. And gosh, I hope it just, it becomes one of those I just see it getting shared and like, that just being a really positive message that gets spread, which will be great. And a lot less shame in the world and embarrassment that comes with sometimes staying a little too long.
Yes. And I'm all about there being a lot less shame in the world. So thank you, Stephanie.
Oh, gosh.
I would love to be your friend.
Okay, we have to be friends. And I can't wait to read your book. Yeah, because shame is, I don't even think I realized how much shame I've been carrying.
I think that's the reality for so many women. They do not realize that the shame colors every aspect of their life and relationships. So I'm excited to get my book out.
It is very heavy. Yes, I'm ready for my copy to my new friend, Stephanie. And I would love to see you next time I'm in Cali too.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I'm sure lots of people will be buying your books. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you for listening to Stronger in the Difficult Places. New episodes will go out on Tuesdays. If you're new here, welcome. Please subscribe so that you will be notified of new episodes, and go over to my website and hop on my email list at zoe@drzoeshaw.com. I will send you weekly encouragement. If this show is helpful, or if you know it may be helpful for a friend, please hit that like button and share it. And if you feel so inclined, I would appreciate a review. Have a strong week.